Vendors need to reach out to CISOs. But what does a successful approach look like? Too often, vendors spray and pray with outreach rather than doing a bare minimum of research. So, what else can vendors do to try to create meaningful connections to CISOs?
You're listening to Defense in Depth.
Welcome to Defense in Depth. My name is David Spark. I'm the producer of the CISO series. And joining me for this very episode, you know him, you love him. He's one of our most quotable hosts. It's Steve Zalewski.
Hello, audience. How you doing?
In fact, I would say all our hosts are pretty darn quotable. I believe so. Our sponsor for today's episode is Praetorian. They are your offensive security partner. Yes, they are going to help you by building a security program with you by testing your defenses early on in the development of your security program. Great philosophy. I think you're going to like it a little bit more later in the show. But first, Steve, let's get to our topic at hand. It seems like doing your homework on a CISO you want to sell to is the last thing most vendors want to do. And this was essentially the complaint by Ira Winkler, who is the field CISO at CYE. Now, he recently noted that out of over 300 vendor messages he received, only 2 did the research to even mention books he published. Ira's published many books. Now, this extends to salespeople not being active in the overall cybersecurity community and only interacting for a sale. So, Steve, how do you like security sales professionals to build a relationship with you?
What I would say is to appreciate that you're not selling sneakers, that what you're selling is a trust relationship, because we're in essence working together to stop a common enemy that's attacking all of our businesses. So that mindset shift from one of consumer grade selling to enterprise and then enterprise security, I think is part of the transition that we're in.
That's a very, very good setup for today's discussion. And I do also want to mention that this was an interesting discussion that Ira started. Most of the comments were extraordinarily negative against vendors. We are going to, along with our guests here, I'm going to introduce in a second, we're going to try to keep this as positive as possible. But keep in mind, I'm going to be reading some very negative comments about vendors. Please don't take this as personal attacks from me to you. The people I'm quoting, feel free to send them the hate mail if you would like to. I'm not actually inviting that.
I was going to
say. But I will just say that I'm quoting people. Don't shoot the messenger is what I'm saying, really is what I'm getting down to. But we're going to try to keep this positive, to look for positive angles on this. And the person that's going to help me with this and help you with it and help all of us with this is somebody who's very tuned into the vendor community. In fact, we had discussions about this at RSA, and he's been on our show before, and we asked him to come back again. He is the CISO over at PSG Equity, Adam Glick. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
David, Steve, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
What are the complaints?
Joseph Sampson over at Cross River said, quote, "Part of me thinks that they, being the vendors, might not actually care if one person buys or not. They just spam these out, hoping enough people do bite so they can get their quota." Now, this comes to another issue that I have about the whole quota thing, and we can get into that. Alan Porton of DXC Technology said, quote, "I've seen a recent proliferation of multimedia lead generation companies that send LinkedIn requests, and if you fall prey, they instantly are spamming you. These companies are the problem. They need to be eliminated. I must swat 5 to 6 of these a day." So there is definitely a high complaint on spamming, Steve, here. People don't like this. It's the spray and pray, which a lot do.
And to your point earlier, which is, but this is part of more of a systemic maturation problem. And here's the challenge. We were just talking about this, right? There are about 4,000 security companies out there trying to sell product, which means they need 4,000 sales teams and in-house and channels. That's a lot of people. And so what they're doing is they're reaching across to sales folks in other industries and bringing them across. And so therefore they're applying sales techniques that may work, like I said, for selling sneakers, but will not work for what we're doing, which results in what we're seeing, a lot of spam. And it creates a very negative feedback loop.
Adam, I think a lot of this problem has to do with essentially the pressures that are being put on salespeople. I bubbled this up to the top of, if you are measuring people by certain quotas, and the quotas are often the number of meetings you get, the number of messages you send out, the number of responses, not necessarily sales. And if they're being measured by this, spray and pray is the way to go, don't you think?
Yeah, guys, I'm torn, right? Because if this didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it. If spam messages didn't work, there wouldn't be spam messages. Someone out there is clicking, someone out there is engaging, they are developing tangible leads that they can pass on to their sales team. I don't think that this is a thing where like they're doing something out of futility. Like there has to be some end that they're getting a fruitful product from, that the spamming is, they're finding a return on it. So when we think about it, it's there, it's prevalent, and they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't useful.
But then there becomes the issue of, okay, I get 1 in 1,000 to respond, and that can actually turn into a sale. And that's totally worth it if I send out 10,000 messages and 10 responses and 10. I mean, that's, of course, I would keep doing that all day.
It costs you nothing. If I want to send 200 emails, I can make an Excel mail merge and I can blast them out there, and it takes me 30 seconds. The downside, or where there are the ramifications, I think, is the impact from your value or your perception as a vendor, is that you can start getting a bad name. And there are companies out there that have the bad name, and we talk about them and we make jokes about them because they're notorious for these type of techniques.
Okay. So Steve, that's what I got to you. How damaging can that be? Or is there a balance?
So you get to the so what, now what? Which is, yes, you can fill the top of the funnel with a whole lot of leads, but they truly are not qualified leads. They're warm bodies. So we're getting into the used car salesman mentality of, we're then going to find you and we're going to hammer you to try to put you under pressure to buy something and make it important. And that fails. And that's where we're seeing now the damage being done to the ecosystem, which is, it happened, top of funnel's happening, everybody feels good, but nothing's coming out the bottom of the top of the funnel. It's not 1 in 100, it's 1 in 1,000. And so now everybody's being frustrated because it's not working, but it's the only way they know how to do business.
And to be clear, we're just talking right now, Steve, about the generic nonsense spam. Like, we're not talking about the tailored things and the other aspects we'll get to. We're talking about just the noxious, annoying nonsense that comes through in our LinkedIn inboxes. I can't check my LinkedIn inbox. I've given up on it.
Right. It's what we call inside sales, right? Cold sales, inside sales. What you're basically doing is you're dialing for dollars, so to speak, right? And that's just it, which was, for this industry, we have very little tolerance for that now because of what we're trying to do, right? From a security perspective of managing attacks, it's rebounding on itself. And so it's becoming 10 times worse, twice as fast.
What are they doing wrong?
Larry Whiteside Jr., CISO over at Reg Sales, said, it's gotten so much worse. I get people reaching out for my nonprofit. I ask them if they even know what my organization does. It's a volume game at this point for them, but I will not respond. I've tried to educate people, and some had the nerve to get offended, so I stopped. Not worth my energy anymore. I've had that happen before. David Moore of Internet Safety Group said, quote, I've tested other sites like Facebook, social media, dating, etc., and I'm convinced that they are crawling with spam bots. They never even look at your profile to see what you're all about before they send out their pitch. So we're going to spin this a little bit positive. We agree that this is happening. And I think what happens is it gives a bad rep to those who are trying to perform well. I always say it's hard to be an injury attorney or an ethical used car salesman. I mean, like, they are given such bad raps generally. So how do you sort of elevate yourself above a crowd that's behaving poorly, Adam?
Yeah, and I think, quick point on Larry's comment there, It's gotten so much worse. I don't think it has. I've been doing this for 15 some odd years at this point. It has been a pretty steady baseline for a level. I don't think it's gotten worse in the relative years. I don't think it was better a long time ago. I think it's been at this level for a long time. And David, to your question there, Steven hit the nail on the head right off the bat. This is a relationship game. Everything we do is based on the relationships of who you know, how well you know them, and how you can accomplish business together. For me, that's the key to success. It's establishing these meaningful business relationships. You're probably not going to be at that vendor forever. You're probably not going to be at that technology company forever. I'm probably not going to be at my company forever. Having these relationships you can lean on throughout a long career is where you're going to find the success. So establishing that relationship, building that rapport, and just driving to mutual benefit at that point.
That's a very good point. And let me ask you a quick follow-up on that. Do you have salespeople you've worked with at multiple companies?
Oh, yeah. Numerous of them. And they might be at different companies, but I'm bringing them along. I want to see their tech. They have a respect for me. I have a respect for them. Like we're mutually in this together. Like they can't succeed without me, and I can't succeed without them. So when we see these annoying spam messages, when we see CISOs complaining, like you're just hurting the ecosystem.
Good point. Steve.
So I'm going to go back to what we just said too, which is, Adam said, this hasn't changed. It's been like this for 10 years. But what's changed is 10 years ago, we had 1,000 companies, many of which were practicing bad behavior for how they were doing sales leads. But now we have 4,000. And so the volume of bad behavior has dramatically increased. And I think that's also added a lot to the challenge at this point, is just the sheer number of people that are practicing bad behavior.
And they're going after a very small audience too.
They're going after a small audience. And this gets back to, you hear us saying, well, then you've got to commit to the relationship, which is you have to do some homework. But many of these inside salespeople, right, they don't understand security. They don't want to take the 2 or 3 months it takes to understand what it is that they're actually trying to sell. And again, so the result is, give me some talking points. Let me dial for dollars. And what we're really doing now is just creating more noise in the system, and we're checking out more and more. And we're doing less and less. And we do have trusted sales folks that we know, right? And I would say sales folks that we know put the best interest of the company and myself first. They will never sell me something that's in their best interest because they understand what we're trying to do. But that took years of time for them to invest in as well. And it's very hard to expect these young kids or ones that are breaking in or just being brought across to fill a seat to be able to have made that investment. And so another way to look at it is they're basically being put through boot camp and then being put on the front lines. And we all know how well that works.
Yeah, and I just to pile on what Steve said, that happens. I'll have a vendor who I've known for a long time. I'll bring them in and they'll just say, hey, Adam, it's not a good fit. It's not going to work out. And I respect them and I appreciate that. And like that is really, really powerful to me when they say, hey, probably not gonna be a good fit here. Probably not gonna fit in the budget. We don't work with that tech stack, whatever it might be. Like I respect the hell out of them when they do that.
I hear that all the time. In fact, the one biggest way to build trust, correct me if I'm wrong here, is tell me what you do and immediately tell me what you can't do. Because the ones that say, you go, well, I need this, this, and this, it goes, the ones who keep saying, yes, we can do it all, thinking the way to close the deal is to say yes to everything and figure it out later, is actually has the reverse effect. Correct, Steve?
Yes. And what you find, and I agree, is people that have spent time in the industry, they know us. They see what it's like through our eyes. And so to their point, they'll go, look, let me just put it out there for you. I don't think it's a fit, but let me just double check and give me some feedback, because it's just a good opportunity to check in, spend 20 minutes together, give me some feedback, make sure you know what it is, right? And it builds the relationship. And that works really, really well, but there's just too little of that. And we understand why. We can't expect the industry at this point, given the size and given the unreasonable demands many of them have based on VCs and having to generate an awful lot of revenue, right? That they're becoming desperate. And in desperation, logic tends to go out the window.
Before we go on any further, I do want to mention our awesome sponsor, Praetorian. They are an expert-driven offensive security company whose mission is to prevent breaches before they occur. And when I say offensive security, I'm talking about testing your defenses against Praetorian's offense. Praetorian helps organizations shift from an assume breach mentality to adopting a prevention-first cybersecurity strategy by actively uncovering vulnerabilities and minimizing potential weaknesses before threat actors can exploit them. Now, from red team engagements and attack simulations to continuously managed penetration testing, Praetorian's human-led, tech-enabled suite of offensive security solutions allows organizations to proactively identify and remediate risk while staying in control of their constantly evolving attack surface. Find out why the world's leading companies trust Praetorian and create a future without compromise. Now, let me give you their web address because that's where you're all going to be heading. Not if you're driving. Here it is. Praetorian, Praetorian.com. That's Praetorian.com. If you can't remember the spelling, just go to CISOseries.com, click on this episode, you'll find their link, and go check them out and see how they can help you build a more effective security program.
What would a successful engagement look like?
Divya T over at Hack Notice said, sales teams often forget the importance of forming relationships. Meeting quotas shouldn't be the defining trait of a good salesperson, especially in an industry where there are tons of vendors. And we reference this, you guys gave perfect examples, same salesperson, many companies. Chris Zell over at Dell Technology said, we keep getting the same question from salespeople over and over. How should we approach you? Why do I have to tell you how to do your job? You would think that part of their interview process might be something like, so tell me how you would successfully pitch to a CISO, but evidently not. By the way, that is a good question for a salesperson coming on. Justin Perrone over at 13 Layers said, blame middle sales management. They bring nothing to the table except telling people to smile and dial. They prevent a lot of quality connections between vendors and buyers. Well, they do the smile and dial because, like you said, it works and it's cheap. Right, Adam? This is why these annoying things exist, is because they work, evidently. I don't have the numbers, but they evidently do. Right, Adam?
Yeah, they definitely do. And on your point there, I like that. How would you pitch to a CISO? The backdoor reference call, I have gotten that so many times where people have called me and said, hey, I saw you work with this technology or looped into that person, whoever might be on LinkedIn. How are they as a salesperson? What are they doing? What do they have? That reference call is one of my favorite reference calls to take. Just to be honest and truthful about, my experience with a sales rep and how it's been.
Steve, I want to get to Chris Zell's comment of, I think this is a good question to ask a salesperson during an interview process. Tell me how you would sell to a CISO. That's what they want to know, isn't it? They're hiring you to do that, isn't it?
They're hiring you to do that, but many of the people that are doing the hiring don't understand what it's like to be a CISO. And so therefore they don't know what the right answer is either, right? Because they haven't spent time in gray.
They were looking for some creative brainstorming is what they're looking for.
Right, exactly. So they're looking to hire somebody who has that answer because they're technologists and they're proud of the technology. They don't really understand how the technology has to be used and abused and validated for a CISO to be able to make the business case for it.
I think there's a sales cycle. And how do you do that initial sales point? How do you break the ice? How do I get into that organization? And that's tough. And I think the way to do it where I've really appreciated it is the network. And it's not the first time I've done it where, hey, I saw technology I really like. Hey, let me introduce you to 2 or 3 CISOs that are also, have a similar problem. I'd love to connect you with them. That's the way to break in. It's the, hey, Adam, I saw you're connected with Steve. Could you connect me to Steve? I'd love to chat with them about, what we're doing and how we're doing it. That to me is the best way to sell to CISOs. If you can get someone to vouch for you, a fellow CISO in the industry, that's worth its weight in gold, as opposed to a cold call, a steak dinner, or whatever that we've got going on.
Agreed. And we hear that all the time as well.
And I also will say, I'm trying to be positive here, right? Which was what we're starting to tell everybody is you got to invest time in the relationship. So anticipate it's going to take 3 to 6 months before you start to be effective. But that's just way too long because nobody's willing to do that. Because how often do you see the sales teams just churned through? Oh, you guys were on, you didn't do it, we're bringing in somebody else. Well, they're not bringing in qualified candidates, they're just bringing in different candidates. And so we starting to tell people like, go work with local, ISACA or ISSA or any of this local security get-togethers where we're simply saying, educate yourself a little bit more, take the time. But if the company that's hired you is not going to give you that time or give the investment in you to do that, that's what we're seeing. I can't tell you the number of times that the security sales teams that I see or I talk to are folks that are being brought in from outside because it's a churn and burn mentality. Again, because people don't understand what it's really like to sell into this. And so I hate to say it, but if you think about it, it's like trying to sell into doctors. Okay. And so I'm a cardiologist.
Wouldn't a field CISO who works for a vendor really have the insight? Because most field CISOs that I know were formerly a CISO somewhere else that was not a vendor. Adam, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of them have, and they have an understanding of that. But that's the problem we're facing here is like, we're talking about very scalpel approaches. We're talking about the best way, which is rapport, relationships, field CISO. The solution to the like spam and outreach and blasting, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to resolve that issue. But to your point, David, yes, like the field CISOs, they've been there, they've done that, they know what it's like. Lean on them for it. And I worked for a sales organization. I could count on my hand the amount of times salespeople came to me as the CISO and said, "Hey, Adam, how do I sell to you?" That relationship doesn't seem to be there as much as it should be.
And at the end of the day, you have to fill a pipeline because you're obligated to follow the sales process that says fill a pipeline. And so you want to fill it with quality, but at the end of the day, you opt for quantity because it's the only process you know, right? It's kind of what we talked about. And so therefore, you get to, are you a strong enough CISO or a strong enough team that can push back to go, you know something, I'm not going to accept pipeline for pipeline's sake. But most founders can't do that because they're working with their VCs, have set expectations. And so the process just constantly then reinforces bad behavior. And we've got to break that cycle, right? And so I don't have a good answer for that. And I understand what's going on, which is why I don't want to place blame anywhere. But as a security community, all of us kind of not look at each other here, right? And so we say, look at what the consequence of this is. So how do we hold each other accountable where we all want to buy product? We want everybody to succeed, but we got to rationalize here somehow.
Who's losing out there?
Bob G over at Stargina said, quote, "I aggressively block people on LinkedIn. I think it helps. But even as I do, I feel for the sales folks who have to do this, do the work to selling to CISOs. They are hungry and seem to have no other way to try." Carice Hendrick of Chargelytics Consulting said, "Lazy sales reps create an opportunity for those that are different to stand out in unique ways when they listen to those of us who know this space." All right, I want to lead on that last quote right there. And one of the things we did a whole episode about hiring not too long ago. And one quote that we read was, hack the process, not hack the individuals, but look at the process and how can I hack it to stand out. Now, I've seen quote examples of this, of, little tricks that salespeople have figured out, like holding up a photo or a video of them with a sign that says, "Hi, Steve" on it, and then once one person does it, then there's a flood of them doing it. But that is one example, a way of hacking the process, but it's just sort of like it's a fly-by-night option. So let me ask you, both of you, what are ways that you have seen salespeople, quote, hack the process that you've seen effective, maybe only effective once, not multiple times? Adam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's It's a fine line for me. Unfortunately, I've seen the creepy ones, right? I've seen hey, Adam, I went through every detail of your LinkedIn profile and I saw you went to this college. I saw you did this thing. I saw you're part of that group. And they throw the gambit at me. And to me, it's a little off-putting. It makes me feel a little creeped out, like an invasion of my privacy. So I think there's a fine line, right? Like I agree, David, you have to hack the process a little bit to get ahead. Customization, personalization, those are really nice touches to me, and they might get a read. Unfortunately, the who's losing out here is everyone. There's just such a sea of noise out there. How you separate yourself, to me, customization, personalization, without going too far into the creepy land of, I saw you went to this college. I bought you a sandwich from a deli around the corner from that college, and I mailed it to your personal house. Like that's the line for me. So just be careful, right? Take a little bit, add some personalization. Just don't go too far, please.
And that's a good point to make, because one of the things I always say is your goal is a response, a positive response, and not of, hey, let's bet on the Super Bowl kind of a thing, and I'll send you a jersey or your favorite team. But just what's a way I can engage with you, Steve, that you would actually want to respond to me? What do you think of that?
So what I say is be respectful. The joking and, oh, this is my third time, so either the dog ate your computer. And that's what I get back to. Security is not a fun thing. It's a rewarding thing, right? But it's not funny. Okay.
But also, if I don't know you, I shouldn't be making jokes if I don't know you.
Yeah. And that kind of stuff, which is be respectful and definitely show that you've at least tried to understand. You know what I mean? That there's something there. That sets you up. And then you just got to hope this is your lucky day where I read that and I either have 5 minutes and say, all right, hearts and minds, one at a time, kind of liked your approach. Let me at least give you a response because I'm trying to do the best I can. It's only going to be one a day, and maybe it was your lucky day. So you have to set yourself up to be lucky, and that's the best I can offer.
And I would add, be a human, right? Like, don't be the class clown. Don't be this incessant nag. Like, I've seen it before. Oh, the third email, the fourth email, you must be on an island somewhere. Blink twice if you get like, I've seen it. Just be a human. Talk to me like a human. And if there's something there, if there's a relationship opportunity to build or to, come in and, check out the technology, I want to do it. But I'm not going to do it if you're just not going to be, recognize me on the humanity level.
Essentially, all relationships, they just begin without essentially jumping into bed. Sometimes people do want to jump quickly, but at least there's something happening before that. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, and I want to ask both of you your favorite quote and why. And I'm going to start with you, Adam. And I know we tilted very negative with a lot of these quotes, so it's okay if you pull a negative quote because that's a lot what you have to choose from here. But tell me your favorite quote and why.
I think for me, the favorite quote is the sales teams often forget the importance of forming relationships. Meeting quotas shouldn't be the defining trait of a good salesperson, especially in an industry where there are tons of vendors. I can't stress that enough. We are in a relationship business. How we operate is based on mutually beneficial business relationships. If you don't have any sort of business relationship with me, I'm probably not buying your tech. There's a bunch out there. There's probably someone I have a good relationship with. I'm more likely to do business if I trust that person, if I know them, if I've seen them before, if I've talked to them. I can't stress it enough. Build that relationship, work on strengthening that, and then everything else will just come.
That's from Divya T over at Hack Notice. All right, Steve, your favorite quote and why?
Some good ones today. I am going to go with Chris Zell at Dell Technologies, which is, so you would think that as part of the interview process, you might be asked a question like, so tell me how you would successfully pitch to a CISO, which I think gets back to doing your homework and looking at the industry and simply saying that should be a question. If you don't know how to sell to a CISO, if you don't know what a CISO is, it's kind of probably a red flag that you're not doing right by the industry, and either find somebody else or don't do it.
Very good point. Well, that brings us to the close of the show. And I want to thank our guest, Adam Glick, who is the CISO over at PSG Equity. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining us again. If you have any last comments on this or you're hiring, please let us know. But first, I do want to also thank our sponsor, Praetorian. Remember, their web address is praetorian.com. That's praetorian.com. Please go check out what they're doing on their site because they can help you build a better security program with their offensive first security program to test your defenses at the beginning of your program. Not an after the fact, not a compliance-led driven thing. No, build a better security program. Take a look at what they're doing at Praetorian. Steve, thank you as always. Adam, any last thoughts? Hiring, anything like that you want to tell us?
Yeah, careers.psgequity.com. We've got a ton of open spots. We're looking for some security analysts. We've got a bunch of portfolio companies looking for talented security people. Please check us out.
That is awesome to hear. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you to our audience. We greatly appreciate your contributions and for listening to Defense in Depth.
We've reached the end of Defense in Depth. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss yet another hot topic in cybersecurity. This show thrives on your contributions. Please write a review, leave a comment on LinkedIn or on our site, CISOseries.com, where you'll also see plenty of ways to participate, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to Defense in Depth.